Welcome to a new video in my home automation series. Top 10 videos are quite popular on YouTube, and back in, I think it was the summer, I did a top 10 of my most successful ESP projects or Arduino projects, and I wanted to follow up this with my top 10 Node-RED projects. I mean, after all, I do a lot of stuff on this channel, but Node-RED is a main theme, so if I try to do something, I try to do it in Node-RED. And I was trying to come up with all these 10 things that I want to mention here, and I realized that most of it is like, sort of like under the radar stuff. So I like to use my Node-RED to do invisible things and not to be like a very customer facing. Having said that, I think the top one is actually going to be a customer facing application or solution. Probably about a year ago, maybe 1.5, I did a whole video on my home automation solution. So for me, Node-RED is not really like a home automation thing. So I have a industrial PLCs controlling the the lights and the heating and that sort of stuff, and that takes care of the UI and touch screens and that sort of stuff. So Node-RED, for me, it really ended up being a sort of like a middleware, like the integration layer between all these different systems. So I have the PLCs that communicate on Modbus. I have a bunch of things that I have created which usually communicate on MQTT. I have a small Zigbee network. I have Influx for database management. I have Grafana for all the reporting, and also some other different hardware platforms like 433 megahertz Wi-Fi, RF, and cameras. And all these things actually come together in Node-RED. And so, as I said, I use it as more like a glue layer between all these different systems, and actually do proper automation, like execute logic, do things in the background which doesn't really require my interaction. But let's start from the beginning. And so the first one, I'm going to go from the most impactful or the most used application to the least used one. So it's going to be not the usual order where the big one is at the end. So the big one is going to be in the beginning. So the first one has to be Telegram, because as I said, I have touch panels and some UIs to control lights and that sort of stuff, but I was really missing an application that is good for messaging, and not so much that I want to message or I want to talk to a bot, which well, it does that as well, but it's more like some sort of easy way to look at what's been happening, because I use Telegram to keep or send myself messages of things that are happening around the house. You can see a couple of things here, like some report on my Zigbee devices. I have this water scare which reminds me to take a sip. I have somebody coming, and I get a camera from the front door and a lot more of that, and I get a new movie that I need to download from Torrents, and again there's some graphs that I get at the end of the day, some status of my EV charging. So these are the things that are coming, and in most cases, I don't really need to immediately respond to these. And I like that fact that it's just there, there in the system. I can, whenever I have time, the most recent one is always on the notification, but I can just go back on my phone and then, see what's going on. And also, this is why I use these icons for most of my messages as well. So if I just look at the icon, I know what type of message that is, and it's really easy to look at them. But I might not need to respond to them immediately. And of course, if I would use Home Assistant or something like that, the notification system would be built into Home Assistant, but here it's well, I didn't have that, so I had to invent something, and I started using Telegram. Not that it's the best solution, but I think you can do the same functionality in let's say WhatsApp or Viber, or I don't know what other messaging platform. Probably the only thing I would say is that have the ability to send images or well, I think images at least, but or maybe videos or sounds. I think it's quite useful, and that's definitely a must. So it should not only be, you know, just simple text messages. And the other thing I also like is, if you follow my channel, I have done a lot of these applications where I can, you know, quickly type some keywords or instructions, and then the system is going to send me some prompts that I can easily select instead of, you know, just keep typing. So let's say I want to check or create a graph for myself. So I select a device, and I select a value from the device, and it just quickly generates the graph for me. So if I want to quickly look at something, you know, some temperatures or any other value for the last, I think it does it for 24 hours, I can just quickly get this, and it only takes me a couple of clicks. And I like the fact that Telegram has these options that instead of waiting for a text prompt, it gives you buttons that you can quickly click. But I've seen very similar things in Viber as well. So I'm pretty sure this is not unique to Telegram. So that's the flow. And oops, not this one. Not here. And so, as I said, it's probably not the easiest one, and especially if you look at the flow, I made it, I think, particularly complicated, but I built a whole framework around the whole, you know, the Telegram messaging and how it interprets all these commands that I can give, out of which I only use just a few. So as you can see, I have implemented all these different functions. Actually, I think I can just ask for help and it's going to give me all the different functions. But really, I only use just a few of them on a regular basis. And most of the others were just like, you know, early test things, so I know how it works. But yeah, and so that's one of the thing. And I also built a lot of additional functionality on Telegram. Probably the only the other thing which I use the most is this scheduling, subscription scheduling option, which I can create these sort of like services that I just define. So if I quickly show you how it works, so on Telegram. So I can create these services like, you know, the rainfall graph, the doorbell. That's when I get the image. So my Telegram basically has just two users. Well, it's me and my wife, and I can specify here who would be receiving these messages. So let's say if the doorbells, then the sort of like the doorbell integration, which picks up the RF455 message, sends this sort of service message to this whole subscription model, and then based on the settings, it knows that the flow needs to send a message to me on Telegram and also for my wife, because both of us are subscribed to the doorbell service. And basically everything that you see in Telegram is a service, and that's how I control whether I'm the only one receiving it or both of us are receiving it. It's, as you can see, it's not a huge thing. It's basically if somebody rings the door or the washing machine is completed, then both of us get it. Oh, and then maybe there is some Torrent stuff as well. Anyway, so, but yeah, I mean, most of the stuff is just for me, and that's how I manage messages. And then it's much easier to just turn on certain messages if I don't need them anymore, than, you know, go into the code and, you know, disconnect and that sort of stuff. So definitely that's the best one, I think, that I use at the moment. Number two is the camera integration, and I don't really do a lot with the cameras, but that's pretty much it. So I have a camera which is pointing outside, and then it sends me a message every time somebody rings the doorbell. And it's very easy with Reolink cameras, because you can get a URL which returns an image. I can save that image, I can put it into a Telegram message, I can put it in, I can save it, I can do whatever I want with that message. Actually, now I have two cameras, so if I come in Well, first of all, it tells me who is coming in based on the RFID or the code, so it knows that it's me or my son is coming home, and I also get a message. And I included a message mainly because I thought that maybe somebody would start playing around with these key entries, but it has never happened. And it has this additional functionality that I actually have two cameras. There is one camera which you can see here, and then it takes another image when somebody just rings the doorbell. And again, this is really great because I get this overall image. I can see whether it's it's like a random person, or is it like DHL or DPD or one of the local delivery services, or like the postman. But if it's and of course if it's somebody coming, then I can see this image where it shows the face more clearly. It's very simple thing, but again, I'm getting these images every day, and even though that sometimes I know who is coming, I tend to look at the images still, and this is why I think it's very useful. So that was number 2. So number 3 is access control, which I already mentioned here, and that's that piece of thing here. And I try to include some snippets from other videos, but I created this massive, well, not massive, this big access control solution, which is based on a keypad and an RFID reader that I purchased from AliExpress. Really cheap stuff, but cheap stuff. And it is that usual all-in-one solution where you can program keys and then it has an output for a relay to open the door. But it is also possible to just configure this as a V-Gun reader. And I created a small board with an ESP8266, which gets all these scans, key presses, and everything. And I'm not using the internal logic at all. It just captures whoever keys in a code or scans an RFID tag, and then it comes to, well, of course, it comes to Node-RED. What else? And I have this big access control solution which has all the settings of which PIN codes are assigned to each user, and the RFIDs are assigned to each user. What is the username? Is the user restricted to only gain entry on certain days of the week or certain times of the day? And but more importantly, everything gets logged, and these are the messages that I also receive in Telegram. So I can see that I was coming in, or it was my son coming in. Maybe he, came in a couple of days ago, and it is a good validation to see, who is coming in and out. But more importantly, it's more like a convenience feature because in many cases I, leave the house. I mean, I have the main, key to the door that's not connected to this. So this whole system only lets me into my garden, but I don't need an additional key to get into the garden. Or maybe if I'm only, I'm the one who is leaving, maybe I go for a run or just for a walk, and somebody is at home, so the door is not locked, then I don't need to take my keys. I can just, let myself in using a key. And also I can give these keys to other people, like my brother, so he can come in if he wants to get something from the garden. So sometimes we just, talk on the phone that, oh, I need a hedge trimmer. It's like, okay, you will find a hedge trimmer in the back patio. Just let yourself in, get it, and that's it. Also, I've given keys to the gardener so they can let themselves in and out. And of course, that gives no access to the house. It's just a garden. So. And the fact that I'm receiving all these images sort of gives me this sense of security that I can verify who is coming in and out. So that was number 3, and the number 4 is RFLink. And this is one of the other sleeper functionality. And there's one more sort of integration that I was talking about. So that's also a fairly complicated flow. Just because I'm handling so many different devices. But I found this, I think it's a Dutch project, which is using an Arduino Mega with sort of like an RF shield. So it's like an RF433 to MQTT sort of service, but instead of converting it to MQTT, it just, converts it to serial message. So it is connected to my server using the serial port, and then it just gives me messages whenever it detects 433 signals. So I think I implemented this before the RF2 MQTT came out, or at least I wasn't aware of that. And I think both of them would work fine, but I'm stick with the hardware. To be honest, I don't think I have upgraded the firmware for the last 5 years. So maybe if I would do that, then it would, recognize much more devices. But as you can see, I'm mainly using it to read the data from my weather station, which is good because it gives me rain information that I use in a few places. And of course, the doorbells at the gates and the door, they are also RF sensors. Now I could have replaced it with something else, but I stick with the RF sensors. They were good enough. And I had some other weather stations as well, but they just I got them free for review, but for one reason or the other, they just stopped working. But the main one I use is the MapLin and the doorbells, and that's it. And then it has this thing that anything which I haven't configured as my device, it just gets locked here. I mean, look at it, how many Oregon hydro sensors I have in range. So this thing, I mean, even though I'm not living in a block of flats, it's like a suburban area, I'm picking up so much RF traffic. These temperature and humidity sensors, these are, look at these old RF switches. I don't know who is using so many RF switches. That's again a temperature sensor. And some of these temperature sensors are measuring like 50 or 60 degrees. So I think somebody maybe has a heater which uses some RF sensors. That's not a switch. Some more sensors, temperature and humidity. So anyway, I could get this configured in my Flipper Zero and could start, switching lights in my neighbor's house. Well, actually, I could do the same with this one because this RFLink, I think, is not only a receiver but a sender as well. But great stuff. It's very easy to use and, working like a charm for the last, 5 years at least. So this is why I really like it. The next one is, I think it should be SmartNora. It's another integration because, as I said, I have my touch panels and I also have a UI for controlling my lights and heatings and everything and sprinklers, which is all controlled by the PLC. But in some cases, I mean, using those is a little bit difficult. So I thought, okay, what if I would build another user interface to control all these devices? And I didn't want to use Node-RED because the dashboard is, I mean, it's good, but it's not that good. And I didn't want to open up my Node-RED. And I was thinking that, what other services I use. I mean, I have an Android phone, so it makes sense to maybe use Google Home to do that. So this is why I use this SmartNora service. So I basically download or sync all my, switches, lights, thermostats, and everything from my PLC using all of this that you can see here is basically just various Modbus communication, and I turn them to SmartNora updates. So, every time I switch on a light, using the light switches or any other way. So every time I turn one of my lights on, then I capture this information from the over Modbus and I update the corresponding entity on SmartNora, and that updates the state on my Google Home. And of course it works the other way around. And so I mean, using it on my phone, it was easy. I could install the Google Home app on my wife's iPhone as well, and it's working there as well, so she can do all these stuff. And we have a Google Nest Hub, one of these displays at the dinner table. So if we want to use voice commands, we can use that as well. And it also has some controls. So sometimes I'm using that touch panel as well to turn on some lights as well. So it's not the most used user interface, but it's an easy to use one, and I have some dedicated buttons, like we have a button that says coming home by car, which opens the gate, and then it opens the garage door, so we can just drive in when we get home, and turns on the lights outside as well, so it's not completely dark. So it has some fun stuff which was easy to implement that way, and I did not have to worry about security certificates, opening up Node-RED and that sort of stuff. So for me, it's worth to pay I think it's 20 euros per year for the SmartNora subscription. Number 6 now is NRMetric, and it is a very personal project, as in I think there was a Kickstarter at some point where you would have this matrix display which can show you, how many YouTube subscribers you have. And when I think I was browsing eBay. It was before I started looking at stuff in AliExpress, and I found this 8x32 or 16x64 NeoPixel, not matrix, and it's in a flexible PCB. And I thought, well, I should be able to drive it with an ESP. So, doing the hardware was fairly easy with a 3D printed diffuser and the custom box and everything. But then, okay, what I'm going to display it, and I created this whole fairly complicated flow to display various information. So it mostly displays weather information, like what is the current weather, what is the weather expected for tomorrow. It also shows some of the social information, like YouTube subscribers. It shows me how many kilowatt hours are generated on solar on the given day. It also gives me currency conversions to like euros and British pounds and USD, and I mean, it's mostly this at the moment. I think when we were going to office on a daily basis, then it would show me travel time that I extracted from Google Maps, the travel thing. So in the morning, it would show whether it's 20 minutes or 40 minutes to drive to work. So it was very useful. I still have 2 of them. One of them is right here in front of me, so I see it every single day. The other one is in the next to the kitchen table, so again we see it every single day. So it's good, really. It's useful, and I quite like it. So that was a good project. Number 7 is going to be, well, I already talked about integration, and most of the stuff that I mentioned is integration as well, but there are a couple of very specific ones. It's like sensor integration. So I have, if I can find it, an outside sensor which has a light sensor in it, and I actually use that light sensor to determine whether it's daytime or nighttime. So I'm not using the sunset and the sunrise calculation, but basically just looking at if it gets really dark outside. And at the moment, that's when I control the blinds to go up and down. Very simple stuff, but this is what you would want. And every time it's not working for any reason, because it involves some ESPs which communicate on MQTT, and the result is now it's then sent to the PLC to control the blinds. So any of these integrations go down, I always get a message from the missus that the blinds are still up. So that's something that gets noticed quite a lot. And the other one is yet another very simple state machine, is the washing machine status. And I have a Blitzwolf SHP2, I think, or SHP617. So it's one of the Wi-Fi smart plugs which has power metering, and I was able to flash it with Tasmota, and I just get the the energy consumption, and it's plugged into the washing machine. And I created this very simple state machine which is looking at the power consumption, and then if it goes above this value, then it knows that the washing machine is on, and then it's looking for the time when it gets below this value, so 2 watts. And that's when the washing completes, and it basically goes back to idle. And this simple flow is so reliable. It just works every time. It's a Samsung washing machine, so whenever I hear the Samsung chime, after 5 seconds, I get a notification on my phone. So And that was using the, the Telegram integration that I mentioned as the first topic. So, these simple sort of like if-then statuses or state machines are very useful. And actually, I'm thinking about creating something generic that I can use for everything that I mentioned here. Or for example, the other one is, I have a plant right here, and it has one of these MiFlora sensors plugged into the plant, and I have again a very simple state machine which looks at the soil, I think it's soil moisture or conductivity, and then it just gives me a message when it drops below 10%. So this is how I know that I need to water the plants. And of course that's, sort of temperature and light and everything dependent. So I'm not over watering the plant or not under watering. And I have a lot of very similar plants, so I have only one sensor in one pot, but then I use this information to water all the plants all around the house, and it works just great. So the next one is going to be InfluxDB and Grafana. And maybe you would think that it should be further up in the food chain, but actually it is not, mostly because it is definitely something which is working all the time. It is logging tons of data, and it's doing a lot of things in the background, but I don't end up looking at it a lot. Probably the only thing which I look most of the time is just to look at the solar inverters. And okay, that's looking much better. So just look at the solar inverters so I can see, how my solar was doing, if I have any issues, or if I want to look at any particular consumer, then I have this overall graph which shows me energy consumption during the day. And for example, I'm looking at this a little bit more often nowadays because last year I installed a heat pump besides my gas boiler, and I'm just playing this game of trying to balance the use of my electricity, the excess electricity from solar versus the use of gas. So at the moment the house is now being heated by the inverter or the heat pump. So that's what you can see in the blue. So it's a fairly high consumption. It's a single phase, it's not a big unit, but it can still heat my house. And if the temperature would be really, really cold, I mean, already we have sub-zero temperatures, just barely below sub-zero. But if it would get much colder, then the guy installed the system said that maybe you want to switch back to gas, because then the gas gets much better. I mean, obviously the COP of the heat pump goes down as the temperature drops. So if I really want to optimize my usage and how much I pay for the utilities, then I should use the heat pumps in milder weather and then switch to gas when it gets really cold. But because I still have solar and I have the sort of the billing anniversary in the beginning of January, I just want to use up the extra solar. So that's the other thing which I'm looking at. So I have 1.2 megawatt hours for basically the remainder of December that I can use for heating, and then I will switch to gas. So, and as you can see, I've done a lot of things in Grafana. So there is a lot of there is a lot of graphs and then reports that I create for myself. Some of them you see TinyGS. I should really update this because the name of the satellites have changed a lot. I have a Grafana report on the access. So this is the, who comes in and out. And also I have, some system logs as well, Some stuff is happening on a PLC that I probably need to have a look at. Well, what's the weather station? Oh, okay. Weather station battery. I think my weather station always runs low on battery in the winter. So, and I guess depending on the temperature, it either goes low or goes back to okay. So anyway, there is a lot which is happening in Grafana, but as I said, if everything is working fine, then, I don't care too much about the logs. It just, churning it away in the background slowly, and that's how it should be. Number 9 is, it is actually, pirating stuff. So this flow is a really early flow. I think it probably dates before actually Netflix started offering subscriptions in Hungary, because I think it must have taken them 10 years to get to Hungary. And even in the beginning, I know that the local offering on Netflix was much worse than, actually what you can get in the US. But nowadays, I mean, it's much easier, because you can get, Apple and, Amazon Prime as well, and HBO, and what else? I mean, there is like absolutely tons. But still, there are some, specific shows, especially like sci-fi stuff, that I won't be able to watch even if I would subscribe to all the different services. I mean, probably not so much nowadays, but like I really like Expanse. I know it's on Amazon now, but it used to be on Sci-Fi, which, I mean, I don't think I would be able to, watch legally. So mostly from the old times, I started using Torrents to download these very, specific shows, because I don't really watch a lot of TV. I mostly just watch YouTube. And I created this one, which I specify a couple of keywords, and then the small torrent site that I'm sort of not subscribed to, but I'm part of it. It has a very nice feature, because you can select specific things, like I am interested in movies and series, and in English and in HD or something like that, and then it will give you all the new ones in an RSS feed. So I just read the RSS feed, and then I just use these keywords, and then every time I find something, well, I get a notification. You could see that there is a new episode of Billions, and then it also puts everything into this list. So from time to time, I come here, I click on these torrent links, I just download them, put it onto the NAS, and I can watch it on the TV. So it's simple as that. And of course, we still have Netflix, so if something is on Netflix, then we would just watch it on Netflix. But as I said, my experience with Netflix is most of the times I sit down and watch, like, okay, I want to watch something, and I watch like not a series, but just like a regular show, and at the end I feel like that it was good, but it was sort of a time wasted. I could have watched something better, but I couldn't really find anything better from the selection. So at least if I want to spend my time of watching TV, then I want to watch specifically the shows that I'm interested in. And for example, sci-fi Netflix is not really good at all, or at least not the ones that I can get here. So anyway, I'm still stick with torrent. And finally, number 10 is logging. So that's again one of my really early flows that I created, which it's mostly logs things that are happening in the system, in the system and all the other systems that are connected to it. So it started off by I wanted a way to know, for example, if an ESP device it gets disconnected, so I no longer hear about that ESP device, because let's say it's not sending sensor readings on MQTT anymore. So I had this whole thing. It has a whole UI element as well. Let me just find that. So logs, where I can create systems. So these are various ESP systems or weather stations, or NRMetric displays, or the RF weather station, or actually maybe the PLC, or sometimes even servers. So I had the Latte Panda, or it's mostly devices. And I created a couple of these statuses, and then these devices send me some updates. So if I want, and they also report their statuses. So if I'm interested in if something is still working, sometimes one of my solar inverter MQTT stuff stops working, so I notice them here. But let's say if I want, why this is not working? Okay, let's say I want all severity the last 7 days. This has stopped working, because this should be listing every time I modify something here, then it should be showing all the messages here. Oh, I know why it's not working, because this I I usually created this for to store all the information in SQLite database, but then I migrated over to Grafana, InfluxDB, and then I did not update this UI flow to use InfluxDB, so that is still trying to read the data from the SQLite database, which doesn't exist anymore. Or maybe there is, some 2-year-old data exists, but this one says 7 days. So, but I've created this system log. So that's something that I showed you. So that's basically it. So I get all these messages that, the PLC is not working, or the EV charger is not transmitting because it's connected to off-peak power, and that's mostly it. And I already mentioned about the battery and stuff. And by the way, you don't see the entire screen. And so nowadays I just use the Grafana for that. So last 1 hour. Okay. For some reason my PLC is doing this, that I don't get an immediate response that a message was received, so I keep resending it. And as you can see, it happens every 10 minutes or so. But then I send hundreds of other messages within those 2 periods, which go absolutely fine without, and then I get the response back that the data is received. Anyway, it happens. But, and here I can also, filter. So if I want the last 7 days, and by the way, this is much better than, much quicker than the SQLite, especially if I want a longer period than it is absolutely, it was absolutely killing the SQLite. Things go online and offline from time to time, so at least I can see those issues here. So as you can see, the device can send, there is a date time, timestamp. There is the name of the system which we configured. Oops. Here, so these are the different systems, and they send a message class, so whether it's an information, warning, or error, and then it sets also shows the date, the state, what it was updated to, and there is like a free text which the system can decide what it sends. Me Flora, okay, yeah. It's usually status stuff, but there are some other stuff that these things can send as well. Especially, Zigbee doesn't send a lot of stuff either. It's mostly online, offline. So that was the logging, and that was the last. That was number 10, or number 1. No, I think number 10. Yeah. So probably that's the least used, but still quite key information. And if you have seen my 2 last videos on collecting, status messages and error messages, I tend to use these systems more and more because, it's fine if I do create a new flow, I do a lot of JavaScript, and I do some coding, and I test it with test data, or I just keep looking how it works for a couple of hours. But then if you just leave it for a couple of days, you have no idea what's really happening in the background. So this is why I created this, just to give me an idea of if something tends to, drop from the network and then comes back automatically, or is it like a really big problem which happens, I don't know, dozens of times a day, and the reconnect and the disconnect time, the time between the two maybe could be, not just a couple of seconds, but let's say, 10 minutes or an hour, then that's definitely an issue, because I could lose control or data or whatever. Especially I'm thinking about the access control. So if that is not working, if I'm not catching the RF signals, and somebody is at the door and just hitting the buttons and then nobody answers, then it wouldn't be great. For some other systems, I don't care about that much, but I think this sort of monitoring is important. And in a sort of like a big system as this, where it talks to a lot of different stuff, I think it's I wouldn't be able to live without it. So I think that would be all about the top 10 projects. Phew, 45 minutes, okay. That ended up being a really long one. If you are interested in any of these specific ones, I would try to link all the relevant videos in the video description. There is going to be loads because for some I only talk about it in a single video, but others are covering 4 or 5 different videos as I work on them. So that could keep you busy for a couple of hours, I guess. But I think that will be all for today. Thanks for watching and hopefully see you in the next video.